sense of denial that people face sometimes. They don't want to admit that it's their child or their loved one that's doing these things against the community. Now, if you go back throughout time, before there were police forces, communities were police themselves. We back up? We just recording.
Yeah,
okay.
Recording.
Were police themselves. Now, if that's the case, there was a time you would be stoned. There's still some countries that'll cut your hand off if you're stealing.
We execute you.
Right. So again, but these are, some of these civilizations are thousands of years old, and they live by these rules without a police force. And all I'm saying is if we want to live like that, we have to be honest and do what's best for the collective, not for the individual. You're the first one to say that we have to stop being so individualistic.
Yes, sir. Certainly.
So your uncle got a problem touching little girls. You know Uncle Fred like that, but you won't say nothing. You understand what I'm saying?
Right,
you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So we have to do better. So again, our children are being victimized, our men are being victimized, and our women are being victimized.
By the state.
By the state. And if we have people within our community that are victimizing us as well, we owe it to ourselves to do something about it. Whether it be exile. Again, I'm not saying that somebody has to be killed. I mean, it may be warranted, but what I'm saying, that's not the only measure. If you can't live with society and live by the rules that are set forth by this group or community that you live in, just like when you can buy a house, right? Or you buy a home, and there's a homeowners group,
right?
And it has rules. You can't paint your house pink, but you pay for that house. If you paint your house, they'll kick you out. They reserve the right to kick you out of the community. So we have to do the same thing. And this is how you keep outside entities from coming in. But we have to be honest and police our own. Because what happens is, when you don't tell on your Uncle Fred, and your Uncle Fred does something to mine, and you didn't do anything about it, now you make me involved outside people, or I kill your Uncle Fred.
And so what should happen? Yeah, what should happen with communities that don't have that possibility of involvement? They don't have the possibility of a sound neighborhood watch group forming. Is the police the only alternative for actually going to? And I'm asking this purely on a devil's advocate. Like, I have my own.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I don't think that any community is not capable of it.
Right.
I think I don't care if it's a community of all women. It's just a matter of watching out for your neighbor, taking note of who comes and goes, and staying as a collective.
And also establishing an infrastructure for actually doing it. You do need people who can meet. You do need people that have some means of handling themselves. You do need people that have some trust and rapport in the community. But most of all, you need the consent of the community. You need the consent of the community itself.
Right. No. You're absolutely right. And that's why I say it's.
And that's something that the current police both have and they lack. And when we talk about what's happened this week, there have been a number of incidences. First off, I think the first thing that I remember happening was Sandra Bland's cell phone video actually coming out. The Texas Police Departments, they spent 4 years hiding that cell phone video, which in itself hid what started the encounter. That police officer didn't arrest her because she did something illegal. He arrested her because she talked back.
Because she defied him.
Because she talked back. That was literally the only reason that happened. And the cell phone video. The cell phone video was no different than what we actually saw from the dash cam footage. The dash cam footage on itself was already damning, but the cell phone video just brought those feelings back in stark relief. And then Sandra Bland is of course the woman who was arrested under false pretenses and who ended up dying in jail. Now they suspect that many, including her family, suspect that she was murdered in jail. But there's been no corroboration of that. But that's happened. Rahm Emanuel, who yes, Obama's former chief of staff. Everybody
wants to help the black folks.
Yeah, Rahm Emanuel. He took to the pages of the New York Times to defend the practices of the Chicago PD, which is one of the most violent police departments in America. One of the things that the Chicago PD did is that they opened a black site where they tortured black people for confessions. Under Rahm Emanuel's term, they
that video started.
Yeah, that's because the video's gone.
Okay. Oh, so I just started.
Yes, you just started. under Rahm Emanuel's term, Laquan McDonald, he was shot in cold blood by the police under, again, false pretenses. And they had the video of it for ages. And they refused to release it, and Rahm Emanuel was one of the people who contributed to their refusal to release it. And you know, when it comes to police departments like that, I implore everybody to read the Department of Justice reports. One of the best things that did happen in the Obama era and under Eric Holder's Department of Justice is that they did do consent decrees, and they also did holistic overviews of the they also did holistic overviews of the police departments in question, which departments were performing in a negative light, which departments were abusing citizens like Baltimore and Ferguson, which departments were using municipal court fees and warrants in order to buttress their own coffers. You know, these are things that happen in America all the time, and the Department of Justice did a good job actually quantifying a dynamic that black people understood in the background, but didn't necessarily have the words or have the data to actually respond to. We have that data now, and we should view the absence of accountability and the absence of responsibility as from police departments as something that we should really look at. You know, when we have police, when our taxpayer dollars are going to police, they're going to an entity that has absolute life and death over your person, that can decide where you go and how you go there, and that carries with it the implicit imprimatur of the state. They carry both the ability to execute you without any kind of accountability, but they also carry the ability to put you in jail, to put you in prison under similar pretenses, and that's one of the dynamics that we're working with, Herschel.
Okay, all right. Now we're back live. Oh man, I'll cut us off. We're back live. You know, like you said before, Antoine, you know, this thing can be done anywhere. It really can be. It can be. We just have to be, vigilant in what we do. It can be done. But it takes a lot of honesty. Like I said, it takes a lot of honesty. And if we're going to do it, let's do it. I don't have a problem with it.
Well, one of the buzzwords that's going around, Herschel, is the term reform. Do you think that reform is a concept that can apply to either police departments or the criminal justice right now?
Reform. Okay. Yeah, it has to, unless we can figure out a way to get rid of it. If you can't fix something, there's only two options. We only have two options. One is to get rid of it, and one is to fix it. Now, if we get rid of it, we need something to replace it. Now, if that's unrealistic, then we have to figure out a way to fix it until we can replace it.
Now, my issue with that, Herschel, is that I feel like that it's almost accepting the premise that justifies police departments to begin with. It presupposes that there is a category called quote-unquote crime that actually exists and that can only be addressed through a blunt instrument like a police force, and I'm not necessarily convinced that that's the case. And we've had this discussion before, Herschel, where we talked about how the police act as a reactive force, and where the better investment for both our dollars that are spent on police and for our time and conceptual energy is to actually reinvest into the communities that have been neglected, because most of the areas that the police are going into have been dilapidated. They've been forcefully divested from. These are areas that contain the most oppressed of America's populations, and they also contain the places where unregulated guns go to, where drugs are thrown into, sometimes by the government, like in the 80s. These are dynamics that we have to deal with, and I feel like calling it crime is also justifying another category of injustice when it comes to mass incarceration.
Okay, now
that doesn't mean that there are not violations of person, but it does mean that for potentially a police force or a violent arm of the state is not the best mechanism to actually address that.
So would you agree with reform, or even the abolishment and the restructuring of something new? There has to be a much different type of training. You know, because there have to be different rules of engagement.
We also
talked about how the military is trained. There are rules of engagement, and there really aren't any for the police. There aren't any rules of engagement.
Right. It should be noted that the rules of engagement are as vague as possible. All they have to do is they have to credibly prove that they felt threatened.
They don't have to prove it.
Yeah. They have to say, well, they
don't have to prove it.
Yeah, that's true.
We've seen that. How do you shoot somebody in the back? How do you fear for your life when somebody's fleeing?
Because he's a scary black person who's going to sprout wings, Herschel.
You know, so again, they don't have to. They do it without proof.
That's true.
They just do it with.
But you know, it's not necessarily restructuring that's the answer. I think that right now the police reflects a state priority. The way the police works is the function of the police working as it's intended to. It's intended to be a force that both terrorizes and causes fear into the community. It's intended to be a force that can execute people at leisure. If I'm not mistaken, the Washington Post tracker for police kills, there have already been several hundred police kills in the year, and we're not even halfway through the year at Herschel.
Right.
You know, this is something that's a persistent dynamic with us, and I'm saying that instead of the state tooling its priorities to police or something like the police, the state needs to retool its priorities to things that actually better the community. If you want a community that has lower crime, have better jobs. If you want a community that has a lower gang presence or a lower capacity or a lower incentive to actually deal drugs, actually make sure those jobs are living wages, make sure that there's actually activity to do in those communities, make sure that you're investing in programs that people can be funneled into, because what we're seeing is that all that money that's supposed to be going into the communities in a positive and constructive way is actually going into it in an aggressive and violent way, and we are facing the consequences of that.
Wow. Why today is one of the days we agree, huh?
Hey!
I mean, listen, Antoine, you're absolutely right. You know, when people turn to crime when there is no there's no other recourse.
Crime is business.
Yeah.
That's literally all it is. It's a violent business, to be sure, but it's business, and usually it's business in the absence of play in places where that generally has a dearth of businesses.
Yeah.
So you know, if you want to disincentivize crime, make drug dealing, make that kind of crime something that that's not worth actually going into, where the quote unquote legal mechanisms are as available to you as the extra legal mechanisms.
Right. Okay. All right. But again, this is something that can be done, people. But we have to be more accountable to each other, and that's my only point, Antoine. It can be done. I don't care what the community consists of, whether it's all women and children or families. It can be done as long as you collectivize your process, you collectivize your security and the needs of the community. You know, so what happens is we have to realize that we're already contained, so we have to become self-contained. And what I mean by that is we have to take care of our own, because we keep allowing outside people to come in. We allow these people to come in and over-police us. We allow these people to come in and criminalize us. We allow people and tell us that we can't be anything other than. And we allow this, Antoine. We allow people to miseducate our children. We allow it because we don't do anything about it. So your silence is an affirmation of it. You have to be vocal. Stop just letting people tell our children anything. Stop letting people just call our children anything. We decide who and what we are. We decide who does and doesn't operate in our community, just like every other community. If you don't want something in your community, don't shop there. Run them out. They have a right to open up. It's a legal business. Don't get me wrong. If I don't want you there, I won't shop there. Take your dollars elsewhere. If people are going to come into your community, make them service your community, including the police, including these politicians. They come around when they want your vote. Then you don't see them again. Then they want to come around and give a barbecue, a little party, come on and vote for me, give you a pen. Damn that. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to make people respect us. We're respectable people. And if people won't give you respect, you take it. You take it. You don't allow people to come into the community and disrespect our women. You don't allow to miseducate our children. You don't allow them to call our children animals. You don't allow them to lock our children up. Because our kids, it's unbelievable the amount of black and brown children that are incarcerated. Who does that? Who does that?
And it starts with detention.
Who does that?
It starts with detention.
Who does that?
It starts with detention and suspension.
Yeah. So again, we have to be more proactive, people. We have to. We have to be more proactive. Don't just get mad at the system. Get mad and stay mad. Stay mad. Don't get mad, go up there and cuss somebody out and never go back. Stay mad. Go to that office every day. Get in that principal's face every day. Make those teachers teach your children the right way. Go to those PTA meetings and make them address the needs of our children. That's how you get things done. People don't take us serious because we're episodic in the broad spectrum. Not all of us, in the broad spectrum. So we get stereotyped. The stereotype is we don't go to PTA meetings. No, not enough of us go. We don't go to city council. No, not enough of us go. So we're already in the minority. So when you see few of us, you marginalize us even more. So what happens is we have to expand our numbers. We have to give a better showing, is what I'm saying. Because to say that nobody goes would be a lie. To say that none of us get involved would be a lie.
Now, some of the things you're talking about, when you talk about high suspension rates in schools, when you talk about our children being miseducated, when you talk about people from outside putting businesses or putting police on our borders, what you're talking about is a consequence of us being effectively under white government. White people. White people control us. White people control the conditions. White people predominantly own most of the neighborhoods that we go to and live in. I'm very curious about what kind of leverage do you think black people have in a context where the totality of what we own and the context that we're operating in.
I'll give you the answer.
Please,
I don't know.
please.
I don't know.
Okay.
You know why I don't know? Until you try, you don't know what you can do. How about that, Antoine? We can sit here and speculate and philosophize about everything. All I know is you don't know if something will work until you try it. So right now, if you're not doing anything, you can't say that it won't work. It might not. It might not work.
No,
but you don't know until you try. Let's say at the next school board meeting, 100 people show up, as opposed to the 5 or 6. Let's see if it has an impact. Let's see if when city council's next session is, if we pack the place out. Let's see. We don't know. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But until we try, we don't know. I guarantee you that. How about that? Is that a good answer?
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
And while we're doing that, we're going to listen to a little music. We do have a guest coming in studio shortly, and we're going to prepare for him as well. All right, Facebook. We have a little